Welcome to the Monster in My Head podcast. This is a show where we talk to regular, real people about insecurities that a lot of us face and kind of discuss the unique ways that we're trying to overcome them. This is not a show for experts. This is just a conversation. So we're happy that you're here. So today we're going to be talking about finances. And I just want to say immediately that neither Brittany, our guest, or I are financial experts. Please do not take financial advice from us and I mean, you know what I mean? Like we want to help, but like we don't invest and then be like, these bitches, like
that's your bad. That's your bad.
Yeah, exactly. So we're more so going to talk about mindset with finances today. So anyway, I want to introduce our guest. This is Brittany Bardwell. She's one of my closest friends. She is an amazing actress. You can see her on pretty much every network that exists. She is also a stand-up comedian as well as a content creator for a new financial institution. And she's done a lot of really awesome work in regards to finances. So hi, Brittany.
Hi.
Hi.
You also forgot to mention that I'm your roommate and that I can hear you talking through the wall. In addition to my headphones.
That's right. Yeah. See, you know, we start off at this place because when you have a roommate, you save a lot of money. So I feel like it really goes
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, well, I am stoked that we can talk about this because this topic of finances is something that I've actually been really inspired by Brittany about because your story has been so amazing and just so cool to see you grow. It's been wild. It's crazy to see where you started to like where you're at now. So I feel like you can really be an inspiration to a lot of people. And that's why I wanted to have you on the show. So first, let's kind of start off with like, can you just tell a bit of your story in regards to finances? You have a huge amount of things that you've done in your life, but let's like focus more so on the finances side of kind of like where you started, you know, what your mindset was, all that stuff. And then we'll just kind of go from there.
Yeah. I think like starting from like childhood, my mom, like raised by a single mom, she's an independent contractor as a paralegal. So she never had like vacation time or PTO or anything like that. So like there were definitely lots of times that we were struggling, but I actually just found that out recently. My mom actually did a really good job of like sheltering me and shielding me from that. I always thought we were rich. Like the way that she was treating me as her like the only child in the home, because my brother's older, like I mean, I got everything that I wanted for Christmas, like piles and piles of Christmas gifts. We went on 2 vacations that I can remember. We went to Jamaica and Disneyland, I think back-to-back years. So like she must have been doing great at that time. So there were definitely times where like there was like a year she bought a Porsche, like a used Porsche and then like sold it. Yeah. So she's like,
I love that for
she
her.
was definitely crushing it financially for like in waves. But then she also would tell me about times where like she had to decide between like, you know, going on a trip or something or like my school clothes. So it's like, that's why a lot of the times we didn't go on vacation. So, so for the most part, she made me feel like we were so secure. So the only downside about that, or like not even downside, but like ripple effect, is that by the time I got out of the house and started making my own money, she also would like, and she's just an amazing mom and did a wonderful job of like taking care of me and supporting me when I like moved to LA to pursue my dreams. She would like give me money every month to help me pay for my rent because she just believed in me so much. But like it kind of in my brain made me think that we just always had money, that there was just always money around, and it kind of didn't really matter how we spent it. Like we didn't talk about money in our home. I was just like, we're rich, we have it, I'm gonna do whatever I want. And so yeah, once I started making my own money and like wasn't, you know, when she stopped like helping me with my rent and stuff, I was just like, money will arrive. And so at the time I'd had like a 790 credit score and like was getting approved for $10,000 worth of credit, and that didn't go over well. Like I think I also just in a combination of like when I was like 21 having like a lot of credit, a lot of credit cards, moving to a different city by myself, and then also being hit with like mad clinical depression. I started using like shopping to make myself feel better, which didn't work in the long term.
Yeah.
And so I so I ended up getting into a lot of credit card debt. And then also, I mean, these are just like the overviews. We can get into the
Yeah.
details of it, but like using it for like acting classes and headshots. Like, I love my mom and I'm not blaming her at all, but she did phrase it to me as though like using it for that stuff was an investment. And but it's like the return on the investment isn't guaranteed. So I just like found myself in my late 20s with 43,000 worth of credit card debt, and then like $16,000 in student loans, which thankfully I went to a community college the first couple of years. And like, yeah, so I found myself just buried in debt. And it wasn't until a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years, I guess 2 years ago now, that I started taking the baby steps to fix that. And now I'm in the best position ever, but we'll get into
Yay! That's so awesome. Yeah. And I think it's really awesome that you're willing and able to share the details of kind of where you are at, because I think a lot of people are there and a lot of people feel really ashamed of like, oh my God, how did I get into this situation? Like, how did it get so bad? I think that's one thing of like, it just piles up like little by little. And I remember the days when you were, so stressed out about having these credit card bills that were just so high and the interest that was so high and it was like crushing you. I very much remember that. And one thing I want to mention, because I always want to come into this with statistics to let people know that they're not by themselves. So there was a survey that Y Pulse conducted of 1,000 millennials, and it said the number one life goal of millennials based on the study is to be debt free. So people like that's more so than pursuing their dream, having a stable relationship. Like debt is such a huge thing in people's minds right now. I think more so than ever. And also 67% of millennials say financial stress compromises their ability to focus. It makes them physically ill. It's really hard. So totally makes sense why that would be a stressor. So you mentioned it briefly, but I want to kind of dive into it a little bit more of what was the way that you thought about money? Because you mentioned something about how your mom was telling you that using credit cards was like an investment, even though that investment was using money that you didn't have. So like you were mentioning that, you saw money as like something that would just automatically come in. So can you tell me a little bit more about like that kind of mindset and where you felt like that came from, even though I know that you said that your mom made it seem like, everything was fine and you had everything figured out financially. Like, where did that mindset come from for you?
Well, I think one of the aspects of them that plays a huge part that we don't necessarily have to get all the way into, but being raised very religious, my mom and myself for a long time had this belief that things were just going to work out. So I think that there was that was a really big part, honestly, of like, oh, like everything's gonna work out. Like, so that was definitely a big part of being okay with, at least for me, and I can just only speak for myself and, the whole religion aspect of it, where I didn't question anything and didn't ever ask any questions, has a lot to do with why I felt the way that I did. And I was just so very like blindly trusting, and didn't really think through a lot of things at that time in my life. So I think that had a lot to do with my just like blind trust and hope that things would work themselves out, because I didn't think that I was like doing something wrong. I was just like, I've gotten myself into a situation, because of my mental health and because of maybe some not great advice. And so I was like, oh, like it'll all work out. And it didn't. So I ended up having to handle it myself.
I think that's actually a really interesting point of blind faith and not even talking about religion. Like, I think so many of us, when we are uneducated about finances, come in with almost this like naive perception of like, oh, the financial institutions are there to help us. Like credit cards are there to like, make our lives easier so that we can make big purchases and not have to pay for it right away. So it's almost like we have this naive, blind faith that, things are going to work out because it's all set up in our favor. But in fact, that's completely the opposite. These institutions are literally created to put people into debt, and they prey on people who are not educated about finances. And I think that's one thing maybe that we have to, as kind of a generation of people who struggle with this, change our mindset about it. Like, these people are not here to help us. These people are not here to make our lives easier. They are trying to take advantage of us, and we need to like and not be pessimistic, but do our best to really make sure that we educate ourselves and not just trust that these financial institutions are going to have our best interest at heart, because they're not.
Yeah, I think that was something that I did not know. Like, that was the biggest thing that I didn't know, because I was like, I didn't understand interest rates. I didn't understand that stuff at all. So I'm sitting here with like $40,000 worth of credit lines, and as like in my mid 20s, and I'm not understanding. I'm thinking like, oh, I'm using this for emergencies because I don't make enough money, so I'm going to use this to supplement. And like, and it's like, saying it out loud right now makes me feel dumb, but it's, I wasn't educated on it.
That's literally how so many people feel, though. That's not dumb at all. That's just like, you just didn't know. How were you supposed to know if no one taught you,
Yeah. And so it's like, it's funny because like now in hindsight, I'm like, oh, like, do your research. But like, I just wasn't in that place. And I just, didn't really know to. Yeah. And so I think I just didn't realize like they're set up for you to fail. And the fact that, they continue to offer credit to people who, I mean, the amount of, ever since like, we'll get to this, but like, my credit plummeted when I had to take steps to fix it. And the amount of like credit card, like, you're pre-approved for this, you're pre-approved for that. So whatever credit that I can get, they are being vultures at me right now. They're like, oh, like, you're fixing it a little bit. So like, I get credit card, like pre-approval letters in the mail, like every single day.
Are you serious?
And it's like,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so it's like they're preying on people who have fucked it up. They're preying on people who fuck up financially. And it's just so gross. But like,
oh, that's horrible.
Also, just the fact that they charge late fees for not paying on time. It's like, there's a reason I didn't pay it on time. It's because I didn't have the money. Like,
right.
And it just gets you further and further into you. Yeah, burying.
And I know
and
that
I found myself buried.
I remember when this was happening, especially when you were at the worst point, at least from what I saw, of the amount of stress and that like weight on your shoulders that was so palpable in your everyday life. It was just this like, and I remember you talking about it a lot, and it made sense because it was always on your mind. So can you tell me about like, what was the turning point for you when you realized that you were like, I can't live like this anymore. I need to like take drastic measures to not only get a handle on the debt, but also like change your mindset about debt in general, and as well as change how you dealt with your finances as a whole.
Yeah. So early 2021, January 2021 was when it like hit just like rock bottom, or actually that's the beginning of me hitting rock bottom. And it's funny. It's interesting that it's all kind of tied into being a starving artist too. Like, this is all affected by and because of my pursuit of becoming an actor. And so, in January, I got, I mean, you know this, but I got an audition and then a call back. And so for my first Broadway musical. And so in order to, like, I did a self-tape for the audition, and then for the callback, I had to be in New York. And it's just a callback. They were not flying me out there. I am not that important. But of course I can't say no to this opportunity. But the thing is,
and we're in LA for everyone who's listening. Yeah. Sorry, we're in LA, so you have to fly out to New York, which is across the country. Yeah,
across the country, and put myself up in the most expensive city in the country, or second most, I don't know, but top 3 for sure. And so here's the thing. I remember very vividly, like, I got that call on like a Thursday evening, which was like bittersweet because I was like, I don't have money. But like, I remember that Thursday afternoon, at the time I was working as a server, and I'd done all my math of, it was like late in January, and I was like, okay, I have exactly enough. And by working my next few shifts, I will have exactly enough to pay my rent and whatever bills are left for the rest of the month. And when I say exactly, I mean exactly. I think I had like $650 to my name. Not including my debt. So I guess I had like negative $42,400 to my name. But like in my checking account, I think I had like $600, which is what I needed to make, basically. And so I get this call, and of course I'm a server. I work on the weekends, and I find out on Thursday that my callback is Sunday morning in New York. Of course I can't say no to that. Sure, I probably should have, but it's like, when you're artist, and how can you?
How can you though? Because that's exactly what you're working towards. That's the whole reason you're here. So like that saying no to that doesn't seem like even an option really.
Exactly. So it's about the mindset of like, this is what I'm here for. I have to take advantage of this opportunity. So thankfully I'd saved up credit card points from all of my mistakes. That's the only good thing that came from my credit card debt was all the points that I had.
Yeah.
And so that paid for my flight to and from New York. But I had to put myself up and I had to put myself up for a total of like 5 nights, like 6 days, 5 nights, because they were like, if you get a final call back, you have to be here on Tuesday. So you have to stay through Wednesday. And I was like, okay. And so I find this like hostel. And again, I'm traveling by myself. So it's like, of course, I'm not going to stay somewhere shitty. Like my safety is important. So I stay in this like really nice, fancy looking hostel. And the cool thing was I got there and I did my audition and I found out that afternoon that I did get a final call back, which was awesome. So the whole staying there that long wasn't going to waste.
Thank God. Yeah.
But then I will never forget. So that was Sunday that I found out. And then Monday I had enough money to have one meal. So I had free Starbucks points on my, like, cause I'm a Starbucks like card member or whatever.
Yeah.
So I had points. So I used that to like buy myself coffee and like a snack in the morning. And then I had just enough money to like buy myself a super late lunch. And then my audition was the next morning. So like, it was just like I never thought that I would get in that situation.
And also, I want to mention, because, you know, when people might hear that, they might be like, oh, okay, well, you didn't have enough money, but you had a credit card you could put it on.
Oh,
you had maxed out all your credit cards. Yeah. So you literally had no money and no access to any money because all of your credit cards were maxed out and you just had no money in your account.
Yeah. And it's like, it's wild because like, just again, in hindsight, it makes me sound like irresponsible, but like, I was truly just trying to keep my head above water.
Yeah.
And like my bills kept growing and I didn't know really why. And I didn't really look too much into it, but my credit card bills kept getting more and more. So no matter how much I worked, I was just still like only ever making enough.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And of course, like, if I didn't have enough money for like groceries that week, then I would put it on my credit card. And it just got to the point where they like maxed out and I didn't have credit. So, so the reason I told that story is because also I wasn't working that weekend anymore. So by the time I had to call my mom and I was like crying my eyes out, I was like, I can't believe I've gotten myself in this situation. Like I had to ask my mom for money, which was humiliating, which of course she was happy to, but she also was in a bad financial position at this point. Like my mom at this point in her life is keeping her head above water. So she was only actually able to give me like $150 like total. And like, she was like, I would give you so much more if I could. This is just literally all I have. And so like, we both are just fucked at this point.
Yeah.
And so, you know, thankfully my flight back is paid for. And I think she like, I don't know what she did or who in my family she asked, but she was able to send me a little bit more money for like the Uber to the airport. Cause I actually tried to take the subway, but it was 4 a.m. and there were creepy people and I bolted.
God. Yeah.
So I was just like, I can't risk my life in the city for the first time. Yeah. So anyway, I didn't make the money that I needed for the rest of the month. So that was the month that was the beginning of me being absolutely fucked. And that was the beginning of me being, because I was just keeping my head above water. I was always level. I only ever made enough to just make it to get by. But that was the beginning of me trying to catch up because I no longer had what I needed.
Yeah.
So that's where shit took a turn. So it was like February 2021 where I had to, you know, take on so many extra shifts and like do all this stuff and try to figure out how to this was the beginning of me working like a bazillion jobs at one time just to like, it was I will never forget. It was like the most painful thing ever because I hadn't ever been in this situation, but like I would have a credit card bill that was due that day at 5 p.m. and my shift ended at 4 p.m. and I needed to make enough money for that bill.
With like tips?
with tips. And
Oh,
that is where I would like to
jeez.
remind everybody to tip your servers 20%.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I
Yeah.
would get so many people who would like not tip at all or tip 10% or tip,
Oh,
you know,
Jesus.
just not well because people aren't also educated on tipping. I wasn't
Right.
until I was a server, but like
Right.
if I'd gotten all of the tips that I should have gotten, because I was definitely a good server, I wasn't an asshole or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I'd gotten all the tips that I'd gotten, I would have been able to pay my bill. But
Wow.
I got myself in that situation in the first place. But anyway, so it was that kind of thing where like I kept like every shift I was working to try to pay a bill that was due that day, and I was just constantly,
Oof.
constantly trying to catch up. And
Yeah.
that is, and also what I ended up having to do, which I think was kind of brilliant for the situation that I was in. It's real bad, but I'm kind of brilliant. I would like pay that bill, and my credit card bill would be like $450, but I'd pay it, and then I would have $450 of credit. So that was groceries for the,
Yeah.
and that was groceries. That was whatever else I needed. There were
It was
certain
just like
things that
continuing in
I,
that cycle, like literally like take like almost like digging a little bit out to then just put some more in. And like so you're not getting anywhere, but you're just kind of like
exactly,
you're just staying in one place.
maintaining. I was
Yeah.
maintaining a shitty situation. And I was maintaining it until me and my friend, and this is such an embarrassing story that truly like hurts my heart, and I don't want anybody to know, but I'm saying it because for the sake of
Yeah.
transparency, and I don't
Yeah.
want anybody to ever feel like they're alone in this, but like
Yeah.
this was the year that I'd started this comedy show with my friend, and I will never forget. I think I told you this story, but like I remember I was in such a bad financial position that we were paying the performers to come perform, and then the venue would give us a check at the end of the night. And for some reason, like there was a new person working, and they didn't. They were like, oh, well, you didn't hit like the minimum ticket sales or whatever. And we were like, this has never been an issue before. They were just like giving us a check anyway. And they were like, well, you can like take that up with them, but like I can't give you a check tonight. And that was how I was going to pay the performers. Like my friend made money and she was like, oh, I'll just, front my half and then we'll just talk to them later. I didn't have a half to front. And so I remember that was like my turning point where I had this like whole ass breakdown. Like I had a full on breakdown. I could not, like, I've had maybe 2 panic attacks in my life, and that was one of them, realizing that I didn't even have enough money to pay the performers that I'd hired to do a show.
Yeah.
And, thankfully, and this is so embarrassing to admit, but my boyfriend took care of that for me. And I was like, well, there's the end of me being a bad bitch who doesn't need no man. Like, it was horrible.
But someone who loved you a lot and loves you a lot, and it was like, I'm not going to let you flail in this situation.
Exactly. So thankfully he turned out to be a big help, and I was just like, I will never forget. I was like crying. I was like, Megan Thee Stallion would be so not proud of me right now. Like, I am not a bad bitch.
Megan Thee Stallion, watch, she's gonna call you and be like, yo, bitch. Like
Nicki Minaj would be so disappointed. Like, and he was like, what are you talking about?
He's like, you're nonsensical at this point. Why are you talking about Megan Thee Stallion?
It's like, I just want to make her proud.
This is the hotel cafe. Like, calm down. Like,
exactly. And so, yeah, it was funny. But yeah, so that was my rock bottom. That was truly my rock bottom. And from there, I thankfully was able to sit down with him and with you, 2 people in my life who just happened to be raised by people who taught them other things, taught them how to save money, taught them how to make incremental changes and do small things to build wealth over time, which was not a concept that I even knew about, because it's like, I always knew I wanted to be an actor. I assumed that I would just be poor until I was rich, and I thought that was fine. And so that was what my mindset was.
Yeah.
And once I realized that like I can never be in this situation ever again, that was where the mindset began to shift. Yeah. And I was like, I don't have any other choice but to make better small choices, even though I wasn't convinced at the time, because I didn't know. I wasn't convinced it was going to really work, but I had to do something different than what I was doing. I feel like I've been talking for a million years. Sorry.
No, it's okay, because all of it's super good. I think I remember that point too, because you had told me while you were really struggling with this, you were like, once I get my big acting job, like everything is going to be taken care of. And I remember thinking like, oh, but until then, you're going to be is struggling so much. And also, even when you get that big acting job, you still maybe won't know how to manage your finances, you know? And so
Right.
I wanted to read a couple different quotes, a couple different statistics here, because I want to like look at the gravity of this problem for everyone, as well as a couple quotes that I think are really cool. So just so you know, you're not alone in this. 60% of 27 to 35-year-olds have just $1,000 or less in their savings and in their checking, like just $1,000 or less. 60%.
60%.
Mm-hmm. A
Wow.
full 35% of this age group, more than 1 in 3, has less than $100 in their savings. So this shows that so many of us did not get the education that we needed in order to understand how to save wealth and how to save not only for our retirement, but also for big purchases. And not only that, emergency funds. And I will say for myself, like, you know, I'm the firstborn in my family, and my family have been financially wise, except for they actually made a massive investment when they were young, and they got all their money stolen by their financial advisor at the time. And so they had a lot of money struggles and really weren't able to teach me early on what it looks like to save and make money. But I was around them and I was able to pick it up like as they were talking. So even though I didn't get that formal education, the environment that I grew up in was more conducive for me to understand how money worked. And I will say, and we'll talk about this in the recommendations, but I also did a class that really helped me with understanding this. But yeah, how are you supposed to know any of that? How are you supposed to know any of that? You know, just like automatically. Schools don't teach that. I think this should be taught in elementary schools, high schools, middle schools, college, but it doesn't seem to be, which sucks.
Dude, I know the quadratic equation and I don't know what the fuck to do with it, but I would have loved to have been taught about percentages when it comes to like saving your money, like saving money at all.
Yeah.
That would have been a lot more helpful than y equals
helpful.
mx plus b, whatever that is.
You use that so much as an actor. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So one thing that I also want to mention when it comes to like, because I know that there tends to be, you know, shame around this topic, is that like when you're, and I heard this quote somewhere and I don't know where, but when you're drowning, you can't focus on swimming forward. You know, you're not focused on making progress. You're focused on literally surviving. So it makes sense why you were in the place that you were. But now I'm interested to know about, so when you had this turning point and you were like, all right, like I can't live like this anymore. This is not going to be, this can't be my life. I'm not going to wait for a savior to come in like an acting job or like anything else to take away this problem as a whole. I'm going to work towards taking away this, you know, this debt incrementally. What was like kind of the steps in your mind that you felt you needed to take? And then what did those steps lead to action wise?
I mean, I didn't even know where to start, first of all. I remember my lovely boyfriend gave me this book called The Automatic Millionaire. So I definitely would recommend this one.
Okay.
But the thing that was interesting about it was I started reading it and it was very frustrating because the whole concept is saving your money, like saving a percentage or amount of your money out of like every paycheck that you get. And just making that automatic. So doing like a direct deposit that automatically goes into like a high yield savings or something so that you're not thinking about it, which that's a great concept. But I had like 4 jobs and not all of them, like I was nannying sometimes, getting paid cash. Sometimes I would, you know, do this and that. And so I found out what a high yield savings account was from that book, but I was like, I don't really know. It's very hard for me to save anything when I only make enough to live. So that was me realizing that I needed to change up my work situation somehow in order to, like, the biggest problem, the whole problem the entire time, but I just didn't connect the dots, was that I wasn't making enough money to live. I never laid out my budget. I was just winging it. I was truly just winging it. And so I didn't know how much I needed each month. And I didn't know how much I was even making each month. And the thing that really hated, the thing that I really hated about being a server and, or just like, being a server was that my money wasn't consistent. And like, that works for some people. That's completely fine. But for me, I was like, I'm barely keeping my head above water. I need to know what's coming in and I need to be able to plan for it. I was a nanny and like, sometimes the family would go out of town and it's like, you don't get PTO. So like then all of a sudden I was just fucked for a week's worth of money. So like I was just hoping that I was making enough money. And so
Oof.
once I realized that I needed to get in a position, so what I did was I talked to my managers and I was like, I'm really serious about making more money. So can I, even though I hated working nights and I hated working at all, I was like 4 to 5 night shifts a week. If I could do that, that'd be amazing. Like I pretty much just told them like, I really need to make more money. So like, please, can I have more and better shifts? And I was doing a good job at work. They were like, oh yeah, we thought you liked working mornings. And I was like, I did, but I didn't realize that you get no money from working at a bar in the morning. So
weird.
I just didn't know. So taking steps to make more money sucks. Like if I heard that, I'd be furious. Like that's not prescriptive. That's not super helpful. But you know, maybe you could be in a situation where you could take steps. So you just have to bite the bullet sometimes and do something that you don't want to do necessarily to make more money.
Yeah.
I definitely value like mental health and comfort over money, which is something that I kind of had to just like give up for a little bit.
But how could you have your mental health be stable and have comfort if you're constantly so stressed out about money? So in some ways you had to like put yourself out of your comfort zone and push yourself really hard to make this massive change. So it makes sense you had to do that.
The stress of money became worse than the stress of working a night shift.
Totally.
You know?
Totally.
So those were steps that I thankfully was able to take. I think that's all I did at first. And so once I started making a little bit more money, and to be clear, it was not a lot, but just a little bit, like to be able to look at my, I made a budget and knew how much money needed to go out every month and then know how much money needed to come in. So that was truly like, this is late 2021. Like it's embarrassing that it took me this long, but like that was my
great that you did it. It's great that you did it.
Creating a budget, knowing exactly. And the thing is, like, when you work so many random jobs, like I was teaching French on a website, I was nannying, and I was a server like 3 to 5 days a week. And there was just no guarantee. So I really had to like know how much money needed to go out weekly. So like creating my budget, but then breaking it down by week, because that's how I would get paid. And know just like how much money I needed to make that week. So, you know, if it looked like it was going to be dicey, I would have to pick up a shift that I didn't want to pick up. Like I just didn't have a choice. So it was,
so you had a threshold that you had to hit, and like you would do whatever it took to make sure you hit that threshold. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's like, it sounds so obvious, but it wasn't obvious to me. So it might not be obvious to other people. So that was the first step. And then once I looked at my budget and realized the majority of the money that I had to shell out was for my credit cards, I needed to change that. Because it's like you look at your budget and you want to cut down on expenses. My monthly payment for all of my credit cards combined was $1,200.
Oh my God. And how much was your monthly expenses? So that's more than your rent. How much was your monthly expenses outside your credit card interest? Like literally just interest?
I don't quite remember, but I do know that I got it down by $600, and now it's like maybe $2,000. So I think total my monthly expenses were like $2,600.
So
and $1,200 of that was credit cards.
Oh my God, that's insane. So it's basically half of what you were paying every month.
Yeah. And so so that was, and then the other thing that was really hard for me was the fact that it was like 5 different credit cards, all at different times. So like, and I had no control over, and this is just a side note, but I did not like the fact that my livelihood was in the hands of like petty middle management at a restaurant. Like there were plenty of managers at that restaurant that didn't like me, that just didn't like my personality. And so I wouldn't get as many like shifts. And it's just like, this is not okay. Anyway, that's a whole other side note.
Valid though, valid.
And so like 1 week I would know that I would have to make way more money because this particular card had like the highest payment, but like
Oh my
I
God.
wasn't going to make that.
The
So it was just
mental
like
math that had to happen for like every single, like, again, like, so
every dollar had to be accounted
every
for.
dollar
Like,
had to be accounted for. And also, like, you were constantly having to think about, how do I like dodge these bills, and or not dodge them, but like pay them just enough to make sure that I can like
just
survive.
enough.
So yeah, and so like, again, you're, so much of your mental effort was going towards surviving. So I love that
Yeah.
you were willing and able to take steps and be like, I'm tired of this, like I'm actually going to do something drastic. So you started off with, biting the bullet, upping your hours, making a weekly budget to make sure that you understood by every week how much money you needed to make in order to be okay that week. Then what was
And
the
then
next step for you?
the next step was the biggest one. I had to do a lot of research because I didn't know anything about it. Like, people were like, oh, you should go into bankruptcy. I was like, I've heard that's bad. I'm in my 20s. I don't think I should do that. Like, don't
What?
companies do
Fire
that?
those people for their advice. Like,
just
I
random
think
friends. Like, oh, isn't that like what you should do? It's like,
and
don't
like rich
companies
parents
do that for millions of dollars that they can't pay? I think my $40,000 doesn't need to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
But I did my research and I discovered, and it's like, I'm not getting paid to say this. Like, this is truly a program that changed my life. I signed up with the National Debt Relief, the National Debt Relief Program, NDR.
Yeah.
The ones with the little blue and red symbol. And there's so many debt settlement programs out there. I just liked this one because it seemed the most regulated and the most like widely used. And I was very afraid of like putting all of this information in the hands of something. This is very
important for everyone listening. When you are doing research about this, you have to do exactly that, of making sure that whatever program that you use wasn't it like
super legit.
It was super legit. It was really regulated. It was like, I can't remember if it was not government guaranteed, but like something, wasn't it
FDIC insured? Well,
thank you.
So your money, basically the way the program works is you enroll all of your credit card debt, and then they have like a team of lawyers working on getting each of those settled. But while they're working on getting those settled, you're responsible for paying a monthly amount into an FDIC insured account.
Gotcha.
And that just like grows into like a savings that they then use to say, look, they're making these payments and we can settle it and pay this money out and pay the money she's already paid, use the money that she's already contributed and is continuing to contribute to pay the new amount to you. So once you like get everything approved with them, all you have to do is pay your monthly amount. Like,
and now how much is your monthly amount compared to what you were paying before? Because you were paying $1,200 before. So then how much did they cut that down to?
$636 a month.
Wow.
And so I was doing it bi-weekly. Because who knew if I could just hit my my lack of money with 636. But so now I still just pay $317.50 a month or every other week. And it goes into this account, and they've now settled all but one of my credit cards. So, I mean, I'm still paying, but so I'm still paying, but I'm only paying this amount. I no longer have to, like, oh my God, Chase was up my ass. Like, they were calling me every other like half hour, like, and it was so stressful. I was like, am I going to prison? Like,
oh my god,
it was so scary. But like, the nice thing too is that they also have like teams of lawyers who are there to protect you if banks threaten to sue you, because the shitty part about debt settlement is that in order for them to settle, they have to prove that you're going through a financial hardship. So you have to completely stop paying your credit cards, which is like the scariest part. And then your credit plummets. Yeah. But it'll rebuild.
You recognize that there was obviously a cost, but you knew that going through this program was going to set you up for a better future. So and especially because you are so young, you were willing to like take that hit to your credit in order to then build it back up again. And I just want to, again, like really nail down this point for anybody who's listening. If you're considering doing something like this, just remember to do your research, because there are so many programs that are looking, again, to take advantage of you. If you're looking to like, can you did you come across those, and what did those look like? What were like, what were because I know you're getting mail every day too. That was just,
I still get mail.
So what were some of the like words that they were using or promises that they were making that seemed like legit, and how did you see through those scams and those frauds before you picked this program?
I mean, honestly, like, it was pretty obvious. I would just get envelopes that were unmarked and say like open now, and like or it would just be like, it just never looked legit. It was, but I would get daily letters offering exactly what I was doing, but it wasn't like credible sources. So it was just like random companies who claimed to be debt settlement, and maybe they were, honestly, like maybe some of them were, but like you really have to look in, like, I wouldn't say take something that was sent to you in the mail. These are people who are being vultures.
Totally.
Like they're looking for people in your situation. So I think it's important for you to look for them, for you to do your research, and for you to look for something reputable, because these are vultures who are looking for you. And so like anything that came in the mail, I would just throw away, because I was like, no, I can't trust you. You are preying upon me in my bad situation.
Totally.
But yeah, I still get mail that's like, we can consolidate all of your debt, and like you have to just make a payment to us. And like it's like, no, no thanks.
Holy, again,
I get emails sometimes
continually preying on people. That's absolutely insane.
I will say though, so the thing that's interesting is like debt settlement, it definitely fucks your credit. I mean, I was $43,000 in debt, and it wasn't moving the needle. Like paying I could only afford to make the minimum payment.
Right. So you were just literally doing this. Yeah.
It was just doing this. Like it would go down for a month, and then it would go up more because of the interest.
Oh my God.
And then it'd go down, and then it'd go up more. And that is how you drown in debt.
Yes.
And so for me, especially in the situation that I was in, like, and again, like, I take full responsibility. I was like, I'm pursuing being an actor. If I'm really gonna, I think I kind of was giving myself like a few years. I was like, if shit's not looking good, then I will buckle down and get like a full-time corporate job. LOL, spoiler alert. I will buckle down and get like a full-time job that, you know, that takes me away from this pursuit. But I'm going to give myself at least a couple more years, because I have put almost a decade into this. Like, I can't give up now. I can't stop this now. So I could have, but I chose not to. And so
I know, Brittany, though, I don't think that even if you were to get that, that would be a drastic enough solution without something else. Because like you said, you were just like moving the needle a little bit. So if you got like a really high paying job, you'd be moving the needle a little bit more, but that interest is literally designed to drown you. It's designed to drown you. So it's like, it's almost like kind of, there was, you know, bigger action that was needed, it seems.
That's true. And so for me, I was working jobs where I was getting paid like basically minimum wage, or just like not enough money. So I had to, there was just no chance of me. I was able to look at the reality of the situation. And see that I wasn't getting out of it. I used to think that like, oh, if I just keep paying this down, like it won't be so bad. But I was so in it that I didn't realize it was going up. And so once I realized there's no, this was when I went to I tried to consolidate all of my credit cards at my bank. And I met with like a banker, and she was like, we can't, you know, do this for you. I forget why. But I think I like didn't make enough money for them to trust me to consolidate it and make my payments. But she was like, but you do need to do something about this, because you're not getting out of this. She's like, at the rate you're going, just so you know, you're not getting out. Like, at the rate of this thing, you will never pay this off. And so, and that, I think that's what woke me up the most. And so, but I will say, like, this is what I needed to do, because I was in so much debt that I wasn't getting out of. But I have a friend who was in, I think her credit card was at like 7,000, and she couldn't afford the payments, and she just had the one credit card. You can call and negotiate yourself. You
interesting.
Can settle down your own debt sometime. You can try. You have to like prove that you're in like financial hardship or whatever, but you can try to settle it down yourself. I think
so there are
she did that with
different
like
tactics based on your situation that you can use. And I think the most important thing is, first of all, recognizing the severity of your situation, recognizing if it's getting better or not getting better or more likely getting worse, and then choosing to make the difficult decision to do something drastic, whatever that be for your situation, after doing your research, and then just committing to do it, which I think is exactly what you did. So let's talk a little bit about, so you made this decision, because I want to kind of bring up this quote, because now we're getting to the place where you are so in this hole of debt. Now you are kind of bringing yourself back to this, like, neutral level of, you're working through your debt. You're not stuck here anymore, but now let's talk about growth. So something that I really found a cool quote that said, rich isn't an amount of money. It's a mindset about how you live. If you believe you can win, you can. Another one is, wealth is largely the result of habit, by John Jacob Astor. The first one was Dave Ramsey, who we'll talk about in a second. And then also, your financial success is determined by your relationship with money. So I think those are all really good. So tell me, once you made this decision to kind of make this drastic action, how did you change your relationship with money as a whole? And then what are you doing now to build for your future?
Yeah, so the concept that worked for me as a independent contractor doing a million different jobs. I think I had like 3.5 jobs, like serving, nannying. I had like a part-time like PR associate job and teaching French online. Like I had a million different like sources of income, and it still wasn't a lot. Like I wasn't rolling in money. I was making just barely more than what I needed. And so and my boyfriend helped me realize the concept of percentages. But what I did, I think I'm not saying I invented the wheel, but I created for myself a concept that made sense for me. And every month my income would fluctuate. So what I would do was I finally got to a point earlier this year, where I could sort of get a pretty good idea of how much money I would make that month. So at the beginning of the month, I would do the math and I would lowball it so that I didn't get negatively surprised. And I would figure out like a lump sum of what I expected to make that month. And then I would do percentages, and I would have to Google it because I'm really bad at math because I'm an actor.
Girl.
But I would look up, so let's say like that month I was going to make $2,900. So I would look at the total of what my bills were, which was like, I don't know, let's say 1,800. Rent and bills. And so I would say like, what percentage of 2,900 is 1,800? And then it would give me a percentage. Let's call it 60% because I'm not doing math right now. And then I would give myself like maybe $150 a week for spending money for like groceries, for gas, for stuff like that. And so I would do that times 4 weeks. So that's $600. Yeah. And so I'd say like what percentage of 2,900 is 600. And then I would, whatever was left from what I expected. So let's just say, these are not real numbers because I can't math right now. But let's say it was like 60% and 30%, right? So 60% of what I expected to make needed to go to bills. 30% of what I expected to make would go to my checking for spending money. And then whatever was left, I would do my very best to save. And so that would be 10%. So because I had money coming in from everywhere, I would just know that those were my percentages for the month. So if I made $100 from teaching French, then 60 of that would go to my bills. 30% would go to my checking, and then 10%, I opened a high yield savings account. So 10% of that would go into my high yield savings. If I made $500 from serving, same thing. I would just break it down. What's 60% of this? Bills. What's 30% of this? So every time that I got paid, I would know how much money went where. And so that was my sort of like way of breaking it down and making it automatic, like that book was saying. But that was like my way of doing it because I just had so many different sources of income.
You're a contractor. And I think that a lot of books and a lot of advice does not take into consideration that there are so many people who work as independent contractors who are not having their money come from one place. I'm the same way. So it's like I have to actually manually move my money to different accounts, and it can't be automatic. So I love the fact that you established buckets. It sounds like based on what you knew your bills were going to be, and every single dollar that you put into that account, you would put that into buckets. And that takes a lot of discipline as well. So it's really good that
Right.
you made sure to do that.
And I really valued saving money for an emergency no matter what. So even if it was $10, even if it was $6, I would put it into my high yield savings account. It did not matter because I knew that I had to get into the habit of saving for an emergency. Because before it was like, I'll pay my bills and then I'll just like spend the rest on whatever. But like I had to, and then I would get into situations where like my car would break down and I had somehow $300 sitting in my savings over time. Like also I didn't understand the concept previously that stuff adds up.
Yeah.
Like that was
100%.
And
because you had very like at that time you had a like just like now mindset of you were only thinking of today because that was the only thing you could think about because you were surviving. But then I think it seems like your view of your life expanded to where it's not just about today anymore. It's about the fact that like you're doing today as well as preparing for your future, you know?
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I did that. And then, you know, I made some moves to just do other work and make more money. And it's still the same. Well, now it's different because I will be having a steady paycheck soon, which I didn't expect to happen. Yeah.
Let's talk about that because I think this is such a, and you know, we'll kind of have this as our last question here, but I think this is such an amazing thing to happen, a full circle moment, because you know, you 2 years ago were in $43,000 of credit card debt alone. That is not including your student loans. You decided to take the initiative and freaking change your mindset, work your ass off, and get yourself to a point where you were not only digging yourself out of this hole that you had ended up in, you're also teaching yourself how to save for your future and making progress forward. And then let's talk about the job that you just got.
I truly by a stroke of luck. I'm not going to say it was anything else because I never in a million years would have imagined that this could have been possible for me, period, let alone while still pursuing my dream of being a working actor. So I wish I could say, oh, do this, this, and this to get this kind of amazing job. I got hit by lightning. But my friend who is a fellow actor works as a content creator for a financial institution. And they were looking to expand. And I was one of the people he recommended. And I was like thirsty for a job, like so thirsty. And also I will say the timing worked out really well because this was in the middle of the actors strike. So I had no idea. When the actors strike hit, I looked at my life and I realized that I was unhappy with all of these different sources of income. I was like, I just want my income to be steady. And so I'd started working toward finding a full-time job. And I was like, I'll just figure this out. This is the perfect time. There's an actor strike. I don't have to worry about this interfering with my actor pursuit. And it came around where he recommended me and I was like the first person to reach out. I was like so thirsty for the job. And after a series of interviews, I just got hired and I now have a 6-figure job creating content. Are you kidding me?
For a financial institution.
I know. And my job is literally to make silly TikToks teaching people about money.
So you are using your acting skills, you're using your newfound knowledge and wisdom about finances, and also you're using your experience of coming from the lowest of lows to now coming to where you are, to where you can actually relate to people who are in that place, which is like, what more could you ask for? And not only that, you also have the flexibility to continue to pursue your dream as an actor. And this is not going to get in the way of that because this has flexibility and, you know, remote work and all that stuff. So I like what you said about how this, obviously going through this journey does not guarantee this kind of result. But I do want to mention that when you start taking these small steps to change your life, things have a way of working out, because you are literally just like, if you can just start moving forward, just take one step at a time, you just never know what's going to happen. It's just kind of about your refusal to stay in the same place that you were at, which is exactly what you chose to do. And now you have this incredible job that fits your skill set. And it's also allowing you to help inspire other people who are coming from the same situation you were in.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so good.
It's wild.
It's so wild.
I'm like
so,
rich now.
She's the moneymaker in the house, you guys. She's literally
I'm
now the breadwinner
of the house. And it's like, we joke about it all the time because I have been the poorest person you've known since I met you.
And
so
now you're
like,
the breadwinner.
It's just fun to rejoice in and just,
celebrate. Just absolutely celebrate that. So let's end this show by talking about some recommendations of what people can look into, because obviously, you know, this is not a show where we interview experts. This is where we just talk about stuff, but I'd love to kind of give some recommendations of where people can get expert advice that has helped both of us. Obviously, we haven't talked about my financial journey. Mine's a little bit less perilous and dramatic than Brittany's. I you know, thankfully was not in that place of debt. I just did have to learn incrementally of how to save. So I can
you
get
were
started.
An inspiration too, because you were always just like, I'm not going to spend this money. I don't have any money. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You have a savings. That's money. And you're like, no, it's not.
Yeah,
and I was like, no, I don't have money. You have a savings. And like, we would always talk about that. But like, now I'm the same way. I'm like, no. That is not money that you touch. Like, savings? No, you don't.
Nope.
No.
100%.
You rubbed off on me.
Yay. Thanks. And now you're the breadwinner. It worked. So for me personally, the things that really helped me understand finances in general, when I first got started with this, was a course in a book called Financial Peace University by Dave Ramsey. I took a course actually in my church when I was still going to church that literally taught me what money was, what to do with it, how to budget. And it was just this, I think you have a book by him, right? Yeah. Look at that. Complete guide. Yeah. He really changed my life. Like, for sure. That book was incredible. Another book that I'd recommend is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. I know that that's a big one. A lot of people know about it. It's interesting with that book. It talks a lot about investing. That's, I think, not really as relevant to people maybe in our situation where we don't have this massive amount of income to like buy houses and, you know, invest in property.
Right.
But the mindset that he talks about, the deficit mindset compared to the abundance mindset, I think is the main thing to pick up from that book. So I definitely recommend that. And then also I read a book called Unshakable, Your Financial Freedom Playbook by Tony Robbins that, again, kind of mixes the thought process and the motivation behind getting control of your money, getting control of investments, to just kind of help you get moving forward. And I know these are kind of very popular books. A lot of people know about them, but I think a lot of millennials don't. I think it's a lot of Gen Xers who are like maybe reading about this. So those would be my recommendations. What's the content that you either read, podcasts that you've listened to, courses that you've taken that you'd recommend for people in your situation?
Not a lot, but I will say The Automatic Billionaire by David Bach. This one.
Okay.
This had a lot to do with me changing my mindset. Okay. Dave Ramsey's Complete Guide to Money.
Yes, love.
And then Having a Rich Boyfriend. No, I'm just kidding.
That helps. Also, song recommendations, Save That Money by Lil Dicky.
Yes. We listen to that song every time we go out to remind us we don't save that money.
Save that money
by Lil Dicky. And then I would really recommend, her name's Vivian 2 on Instagram and TikTok. She's Your Rich BFF.
Oh, nice.
And so she's got some really great insight, and she actually has a book coming out. I don't even know her. I'm just plugging her book that's coming out. But love that. I think it's called Rich AF. Yeah, it's called Rich AF. I already pre-ordered it. It's coming out in December because her intel is super fantastic.
Love that we're recommending influencers too, because I actually didn't even think about that. That is such a big deal to recommend content creators who are creating content specifically about this. So I will add that into my next podcast. But Brittany, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for sharing your experience and being so open and honest about it. I think that this could hopefully help a lot of people, firstly, feel not alone, help people not feel ashamed of where they're at if they are in this situation, and also give people hope in the fact that like you can be in a real tough spot. You can be in a really tough spot where it feels like you're drowning, feels like there's no way out, and there is a way out, and you've like shown that, and you're like a person without like a PhD in finance. Like you are a normal person who is able to figure out your way out of this. So thank you for coming and sharing that.
Of course. And I want to be super clear. I had gotten myself out of the situation before the 6-figure job. Like that was just cherry on top of the cake. Like, I think I have like 2-3 grand in my savings right now, which is like, may not sound like a lot, but seeing as how
more
I
than 60%
had
of
negative $43,000 before, I think that's a W. So yeah,
Absolutely.
little changes change your life.
Love it. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for Brittany for being here. And make sure if you like this podcast, please subscribe. Please like it wherever you hear it and share it with your friends. And also, let me know if there's other people that we should talk to who are cool people that have insight that we could use, because that'd be awesome. All right. We will see you on the next episode. Thanks so much.